Nick Peckford is the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Northampton, and in his past was a volcanologist. And if you want to ask him what that is, you're very welcome. And then Tim Curtis is a Senior Lecturer in the Health Department, and he's responsible for the relationship between the University and Ashoka and this whole Changemakers programme. So Nick, how long have you been the Vice-Chancellor?
I've been 3 years, 5 months.
Right, and why on earth did you want to go and run a university in Northampton?
I was attracted to the university because of its social mission. It's a predominantly a working class town, Northampton. It attracts a type of student who will be familiar in other universities across the UK, perhaps London Met, South Bank, urban in some respect, but also local in getting in people from a part of Britain that's suffered from a decline in industry, which was shoemaking.
Yeah.
And leather industry. So there's that legacy there. The university really is often, as education is, the way out for people from backgrounds which aren't so privileged. And it's my privilege actually to lead a university which has that social aspect as part of its mission.
Right, that's exciting. And Tim, you how long have you been at the University?
About 5 years. So I was working in environmental activism and community activism in Scotland, and came down to be the university's first social enterprise lecturer at the business school.
Right.
I came down to apply to become a university lecturer in social entrepreneurship, and my question to the interview panel was, why Northampton?
Yeah.
Why? Who's ever heard of Northampton University? But also, why would Northampton University do this? And then I met people like Chris Durkin and Ray Owen, who had already been working in the field for a very long time. And really, what University of Northampton was doing was social entrepreneurship. It just hadn't called it that.
Right.
We've been doing it for a long time. Lots of community activism, lots of working with working class students, taking them from very poor backgrounds into graduate status.
And if somebody comes on your programme, if somebody comes on the social enterprise programme, what do they actually learn? Just give us the highlights of the curriculum.
Well, the key thing is that we actually don't have a degree in social enterprise anymore. The whole university does social entrepreneurship, and that's one of the key things. I devised a wonderfully, beautifully designed undergraduate degree and postgraduate degree in social enterprise, but didn't recruit because who thinks of social entrepreneurship as being a career outcome? And effectively what we've managed to do with Nick's guidance is to turn the whole university into something that promotes social entrepreneurship. So the key thing about that is no matter what degree program you come and you think you want to do as a career, you become a specialist in nursing, for example, is alongside that you then learn how to solve problems. So you're an expert nurse, you're an outstanding nurse because you've gone through a process of understanding social problems and solving problems.
Our response to Avalanche, and in fact I think we were doing it before Avalanche, and very helpful for us to put what we were doing into context, is that we want to embed this stuff across the organisation. That's why Changemaker, and we're calling it Changemaker Plus, because we want the UK version of what the American Changemaker is about. And we're just discovering and finding out for ourselves in this year what that will mean for us. Is that it is embedded. It's not run out of a central research department, there's not a school for social entrepreneurship, it's everywhere. And the kind of phrase that we use to describe that is this notion of a T-shaped student, right? T-shaped. If you think of the letter T, you can interpret it various ways, but the bar across the top, that could be your 3 years in mechanical engineering or in midwifery or politics. The stalk of the T, that's the value-added bit. That's where we embed the whole Changemaker, the social entrepreneurship, the employability, the volunteering. So the package, the T-shaped student, when they leave the university, is kind of geared up to whatever subject they've done to help solve problems. And that's really at the heart of what we're doing.
So in Pearson, as you probably know, and certainly the Pearson people in the audience know, we've got this big focus on efficacy, which is absolutely at the core of the new strategy that Pearson is mapping out. And what we mean by efficacy is that when we develop a product, we will be able to, first of all, say this product is intended to achieve these learner outcomes, and this is how we're going to measure it. And then we're going to track and see whether it measures it. And we want to be judged on our impact on learner outcomes as much as we do on our financial returns and all of that. How would you know, how will you know under this new strategy when a student leaves the University of Northampton that they are a change maker or a social entrepreneur or whatever? What's going to be the measure that will tell us that you've succeeded with this?
Well, if you look at that, Tim will have we were talking about this on the train come up actually, it's an obvious question. One of the areas that one of the accrued metric is that we have 3 levels, if you like, of how a student can engage with social enterprise, social entrepreneurship at the university presently. That's at, we will place you as a work placement in a social enterprise that's in the community. We'll place you in one that we own, because partly what we're doing is actually buying shares or buying up social enterprises that we can then use as avenues to place students in a more effective way, because we own part of the company. Why not?
Right.
And then, but most importantly is in the entrepreneurship bit, getting students to set their own social enterprises up. And we know that most will fail. And what's wrong with that? You know, because the whole point about learning, you know, the rather cheesy thing, but it's true. I've learned most of the things in my life through things I've got wrong. You know, but at university, of course, all you have to you're there to pass stuff. The idea of failure fills you with dread. So how do you? The contradiction between being a university being entrepreneurial and allowing the creative juices to flow. Oh, but if you fail your entrepreneurial exam, you're out. I mean, it's a nonsense, isn't it? So how do you pull those two together? So helping students to set their own companies up is a key thing. And so one metric, back to your question, of success would be how many students have set their own social enterprises up across university in the last 2 or 3 years as one metric, how many have succeeded, etc. So we can start to weave in these sorts of ideas around getting traction in the...
And the fourth level is more difficult, and the social impact of a university like ourselves is starting businesses, having graduate students, and but the most important thing is the decisions those graduates make over their careers. And that's much less tangible. But some might start social enterprises, but what, 10% of the population actually start businesses in their career? But 90% of them still can make significant changes to the organisations that they're a part of. So employability for us is not just about getting your first job, but it's about being employable and being a change maker throughout that career.
And have you got employability sort of built into the... How does employability feature in this?
Yeah, it's more than just being creating a good CV, but it's about going and demonstrating to people that you've made changes, you're doing this, or that you've had the experience of making changes. You've worked with a social enterprise or a charity or a community group, and you've improved them. So part of our Changemaker certificate, which is something that all of our 14,000 students get to study alongside their degree, is they choose their social interest, they choose their social organisation or the thing that they would like to change. And throughout their 3 years, they get to explore and experiment how to change and come out with a kind of a personal business plan.
So they have to do that as part of the
They don't have to do it.
No.
They have the opportunity to do it, and increasingly that then becomes part of what your degree programme is.
Right. So last question, the town. So how are you catalysing something that is going to change Northampton? Is that consciously part of the agenda? Have you got good relations? You must be in touch with the health service all the time. Well,
perversely, actually, I'm doing a lot of work with the police force at the moment, rather than the health sector. My background is in community development, and if anyone said to you, "Can a police and community support officer be entrepreneurial?" Yes, because what I've been working with Northants Police is how we actually work with community groups, how PCSOs work with community groups to create sustainable, self-sustaining community programs that improve safety. That sounds very interesting. Oh, well, so PCSOs being major change agents within the police force. That's a massive mindset change for the police force, to say, actually, your change agents are not your senior officers, they're the people on the street who are wearing a blue uniform. Such that over the next 5 years now I'm going to be working with Northants Police to actually change their operating model on the Changemaker principles. So they're going to be looking, effectively becoming a Changemaker police force on the basis that an entrepreneurial approach to policing.
And the university must be in dialogue with the city.
So two brief ones on that. One is it picks up on something Tim was talking about with the police. There's these because of the changes to the NHS, health and wellbeing boards have been set up across the UK in order to coordinate and integrate better healthcare with education. Because at the moment you think it's quite siloed out there. Housing is often not seen as part of the healthcare agenda or social work agenda, but of course it's a massive issue. So we are, I'm in fact the Vice Chair of the Northamptonshire Health and Wellbeing Board, and we've set up an Institute for Health and Wellbeing in the university which will mirror and start to do research and guide the county, and it's a model that if it works properly could be transported to other parts of the UK, in how you integrate services better across from reoffending all the way through to early years in primary schools. That will happen. More importantly and more excitingly for us in terms of the regeneration of Northampton is that it actually has the biggest enterprise zone in England. It's 6 miles of waterfront along the Northampton River Nen. And we want to relocate the entire university on 2 campuses into the enterprise zone and have a brand new 21st century university built by 2018. It's a massive £330 million project. It will bring vast amounts of jobs, regenerative power to the town of Northampton. It's a big scheme. It's been backed by UK's Treasury, so it's up there with high-speed Hinkley Power Station, HS2, I bet not so. Some of the other big infrastructure projects are part of the UK to get Britain building again. And so I can't think of a better way to perhaps end this conversation. The University of Northampton, absolutely at the forefront of a massive countrywide regeneration project with the university at the core.
That's very exciting. So, questions? Yes.
For those students who have gone on to set up a social enterprise, do you have any feedback from them as to what's been kind of an enabling factor? So has it been the relationship with their lecturer? Has it been the strength of the university's network with entrepreneurs? And then for those kind of social entrepreneurs, do you know what they become? Have they, so say if their social enterprises fail, do they then go on to work for an employer, or do they become kind of serial entrepreneurs?
So you might have two quick examples. One is, and they're perhaps unexpected. One of the best, when I say best, the most sort of exciting social enterprises I think we've had in the last 12, 14 months is a drama group. They did drama at university 3 years. They set up a drama company called Tap the Table, a social enterprise. And they go around to performances in schools, talking about social value, social inclusion. That is becoming a very successful drama troupe as a social enterprise. Okay, that's one good example. Another one is a group of students from computing who set up a computer recycling social enterprise. You really go down to the tip, you see them all piled up, don't you? Monitors and all the rest of it, and printers and old Amstrad things, and all that. A lot of that stuff ends up in rubbish tips in Nigeria, like huge piles of junk. People live out in Nigeria on the tips, and they mine them with their families because there's a whole bunch of precious metals inside, and mobile phones as well. Now, you're not going to stop them doing that, but what this group of individuals did was set up a company called WeRePC, recycling a computer social enterprise, going out and working with the people in Nigeria to improve health and safety. Okay, so that quite interesting, two very diverse. And why did they do that? They did that because I think they were inspired not by the likes of me, but certainly by the likes of Tim and the lecturers that were keen to push forward the idea of social enterprise and entrepreneurship in general.
It changes their expectation of what their career is and their first job. So one student who's graduating this year always wanted to be a social worker, and that's what she's dead set to become a social worker. In her volunteering module in the first year, in the middle of the module, her mum lost her baby just after birth. And that seriously affected the family, but also she found that they couldn't afford a headstone for the baby because they hadn't planned. When you're having a baby, you don't plan for a funeral. And she found that there were quite a number of other people like that. So she, in her first year, she started a charity raising money for headstones for children. And she thought, oh, that's interesting, I'll do it with my mum for a while, and we'll get some kind of people from the TV to come along and raise money and stuff like that. And now she's saying, actually, I don't want to be a social worker, I want to go national with this charity. So it's changing the nature of what the student thinks that they want to. A lot of students will come to university with a very clear understanding of what they think they want to do as a career. And then the social entrepreneurship allows them to think about alternative ways, creating their career rather than graduating with a CV and going, where can I get a job from?
My name's Diana Foster. I'm involved in digital design of higher educational materials, and I was interested from your perspective, working with lecturers, of the challenges of the changing role. Obviously from when I went to college, lecturers were lecturers, and it does pose new challenges to lecturers in having more material, and they're not expected to lecture, but they're expected to add value in other ways. How do you support them, or how do your staff find that?
I think that's a super question. And what are we doing now? This is it's a broadcast, isn't it? By and large, we're kind of broadcasting at you. You're sat there listening, getting bored or fidgeting, whatever you're doing. That hasn't changed for centuries, has it? The way that we do education to people. So I think there's if you're a forward-thinking individual, there's a super opportunity to make the education experience more enhanced through technology, and that should not be seen as a threat. That should be seen as an opportunity. But again, it's kind of how you package it, how you sell it, and how you work with academics in order to come to a shared understanding of what that new student experience has to be. It's all about that honest conversation. And it's about not being confrontational with it. It's about accepting where we are, but then rapidly moving to a different solution. I think that to me is exciting. If I was an academic, I'd be, well, I'm an academic, what am I saying?
We'll edit that one out later.
I am really excited about the prospects of changing the way that students and young people learn. The thing is not to ask us, look, we're older. Go to a school now, 12, 13, 14-year-olds, and ask them what they want in 3 or 4 or 5 years' time.
But have you got I thought implied in the question was some kind of was whether you've got a strategy for call it staff development strategy, where lecturers are being first of all being informed about what the new, or sort of becoming aware of what the new role will look like, and secondly learning the skills, because a lot of them won't necessarily have these skills.
So this was the way that one of the best ways we communicate with staff is not through emails. Actually, it's the one thing that staff members, in my experience, will actually look at is something attached to their payslip. So we, for very self-interested reasons. So we use the payslip. So a lot of our comms are. So this is something we put out just before Christmas. Changemaker Plus. We're creating a new kind of university. We need your help. We're at a place now in this journey in the next year where we're going to have a whole series of consultations around what Michael has said about how do we get staff involved. We have teaching and learning champions in each of the schools. We're looking at different kinds of technology-driven education through a big MOOC at one end. We're not going to go down the MOOC. We've got a SOOC, right, which is a small open online content. So we use a SOOC in our university for students who've come in through clearing, perhaps, whose A-level points aren't as good as perhaps they would have been, who are at risk. We know they're at risk of leaving university. We use our targeted SOOC for that particular segment of the university, and it's working quite well at the moment.
But Nick, sorry, to be frank, we don't have a digital strategy, because to create a digital strategy now would be to presume that we know what the answer is. As I'm not a senior manager, but for Nick to presume he knows what the answer is, the consultation process that we're engaging with is to create the strategy that comes out of that. So how will you as an academic deal with these digital challenges? To setting out the vision, setting out what is likely to happen in the future, and saying how are we going to build towards that. And a university is open enough to be able to create different solutions for different parts. So the solution in nursing is going to be very different from the sort of solution you get in arts or drama or something like that. Being able to deliver online material in accounting might be quite straightforward. Thermodynamics doesn't change. But social issues in social work is something that does change year in and year out and does require a face-to-face strategy.
Yeah.
So it's about creating strategy out of what we're already doing really well, rather than saying, oh, you're rubbish at digital strategy, or you don't have a digital strategy and therefore you must have one. Is building that strategy out towards the future.
Can I just say, just follow up that? Tim's absolutely right, and I think the danger of this probably one of the most overused words in English language, strategy. Everyone has to have a strategy. Why? Why do you need all these strategies? Because most of them are never read and don't do anything anyway. They're just documents that just live in the heads of 2 or 3 people who wrote the bloody things. So the point about empowering individuals, right, around a far more open-ended plan or piece of tactics, which might be a year long. Because look, who had heard of Twitter 5 years ago? So if you wrote a digital strategy then, you'd have missed out a whole bunch of potential innovations if you stuck true to that strategy. Yeah, because you'd have been in a cage. The strategy would have put you in a box. So I'm absolutely not going to have a digital strategy at the University of Northampton.
Thank you very much for the inspiration and the insight into the future, and thanks for the time that you've given us. Can we give them a round of applause, please?